Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be ranking every single Chucky movie along with the Chucky TV seasons as well. So all 10 of them, all 10 Chucky projects ranked from the worst to the best. So I wasn't originally going to do this because I don't like ranking TV seasons against movies because they're very different. But honestly, I just wanted an excuse to rank all these Chucky movies again because I actually did it a while ago on my older channel after the remake came out. So I thought I would do it again here on this channel since a lot of people haven't seen that video. And so that means we're going to be ranking, of course, the 8 films along with the 2 seasons of the TV series. Coming in last place, unfortunately, is going to be Chucky Season 2. I don't want to put it here, I really don't, because I did have a lot of fun with this. Like, there are a lot of great things about this season. I don't think any of these movies or seasons of the show suck. I think there's at least some enjoyment to get out of all of them. But for Chucky Season 2, this is the one I think I just enjoyed the least overall. There was a couple moments in between there I really enjoyed, like episode 7 with all the characters being together, all these different legacy characters that have been here since the beginning, and some characters that came in later on, and then of course the newer characters. Like, there's so many characters from the whole franchise that takes into account every single film and makes it important in some way. I really like that. I think that element of this season was definitely strongest. I think they definitely utilized Andy and Kyle way better than they did in season 1. Some of the new characters like Nadine was pretty great. I think she was one of the better characters from the TV series. And the whole Glenn and Glenna thing was enjoyable. I just enjoyed seeing them again because we haven't seen them obviously since Seed of Chucky. So it was nice to at least acknowledge their existence rather than just being like, oh, that's something that we just did in that one movie and we're never going to touch on again. So I do like how they covered on that. And some of the elements with like Lexi and her drug addiction, I really enjoyed that. But that's kind of as far as it goes, to be honest. There's a lot of other things about this season that I just really did not enjoy. So first of all, just like season 1, I do feel like a lot of it does feel kind of choppy, and they really do put a lot of work into their animatronics for Chucky. Like, Chucky looks great all the time. Sometimes they'll have some really cool effects as well. Like the couple times Chucky died this season, because a couple different ones died, they have really good effects. So their practical work is really great. And sometimes they do pretty cool shots as well that just, they sequence the scenes well, it's choreographed well. Sometimes they do. But for some reason this season, I felt like there was more often than not where I was seeing really choppy scenes. It just felt so unorganized in how it was directed. And then also just really terrible CGI effects. Now, the practical effects usually, like I said, are pretty good, but when they try to implement CGI in there, they clearly don't have the budget enough to make their CGI look that great, so it ends up being quite awful. And it's only a couple occasions, but it does take me out of the moment a little bit, and I kind of wish they just stuck to only doing practical because CGI just does not look very good in this show at all. Some of it was a little too goofy for me too. Like, I do enjoy the comedic side of Chucky, I think that's completely fine, but there's a difference between Chucky being a little comedic and being slapsticky. Like, there's a big leap there, you know what I mean? Like, Chucky was comedic in Bride of Chucky. That's the type of comedic Chucky I like, where he's still grounded and gritty in his personality, but he's still funny, he's hilarious. But in this, he just felt like everything they were doing with him was there for like a slapsticky type joke, like the really buff Chucky and all these different other versions of Chucky that just, they're there for jokes, they're there for laughs. Even the what was the name of the butcher, the one who, I forget if that was his name or not, he was something, the Colonel, not the butcher. That guy, like, it's just, I know they're all callbacks to movies. They do a lot of callbacks to other movies, I know that. Sometimes they're cool, I like having callbacks, but at the same time I just never really feel like they work all that well. And there's also a lot of elements that are just kind of forgotten about. Like, they'll focus a lot on it and then just kind of forget about it. Like, for example, the whole Chucky personality change thing where he went to being a good guy, and I never really liked that whole thing, the fact that that happened just from a little bit of torture, and I didn't like that idea. And then he suddenly changes back later on, obviously, and then they kind of were toying with the idea of him having this split personality thing going on, but then that's just kind of forgotten about once he puts his soul into Dr. Mixer, and then we never get any glimpse of him being a good Chucky again. So I don't really know what happened. Did it just disappear? Did it go away when he's transferred his soul? I don't know, but they don't really explain it. And that gets onto my next point. The rules make absolutely no sense. And I'm okay with them implementing new rules, but the rules just, they go all over the place. Like, you need to have defined rules that go for the rest of the franchise and just play off of every movie. But they kind of just keep introducing new things that we've never even seen before. Like when they were doing the whole possession thing, which, first of all, that's a very out there thing, which I think it was a cool callback to The Exorcist, don't get me wrong. But how does the soul of him get into Devon Sawa's character, the priest? How does that even happen? There's no way that, there's no rule that like said that that would happen. You know what I mean? So it just kind of happened, and then he explodes. It's like, what? Was it because he was fighting against him, but like that made his soul explode and that made his body explode? None of it is really explained in a way that I feel like makes it satisfying to watch, and I just get annoyed more than I kind of enjoy a lot of the decisions they made this season. But as a whole, I did enjoy a lot of it. I'm definitely excited for season 3. I also didn't really like the location that much. I think episode 1 and 8 were way better just because the locations were more interesting. I was getting very, very, very bored of being in that damn church, school, place, whatever. I was just getting bored of it. I don't know. It wasn't that interesting to me. The location was cool for like 1 or 2 episodes, and then I was like, okay, I'm sick of this. Let's go somewhere else. I wasn't a big fan of this season too much, and I don't like how it wrapped up either, but it's not bad. I definitely still had fun with it, and like I said, looking forward to the next season. In number 9 spot, I'm gonna go with Seed of Chucky. So Seed of Chucky is a movie that I was definitely planning on having in the last place here, but honestly, after watching the finale, I just didn't feel like I was satisfied with season 2, whereas Seed of Chucky, whenever I rewatch it, I have some fun with it. It's a really stupid movie, don't get me wrong. This is not in any way, shape, or form like a good movie, but it's fun. So I gotta give it some credit there. And I think the best thing about this movie is it has one of my favorite versions of Chucky that we've ever seen. I just love the character development he has in this film. Yes, he's a little bit too goofy. This is when they started going a little bit too far with the Chucky comedy, and it wasn't just, you know, like funny anymore. It was kind of just like stupid comedy, and they kind of show that more in like I said, in season 2 and such. But here I just felt like they didn't need to do all that, and if they did less of that and more of the Bride of Chucky humor, it would have worked way better. But they do go a little bit too far with that. But his personality himself, he still does do a lot of things in this movie that I find to be very interesting. And one of the main things is that he finally decides that he wants to stay as a doll. This whole franchise, he's been trying to get into Andy's body, or at least some sort of a kid's body. That sounds really wrong. He's trying to put his soul into a kid's body. Okay. And he eventually realizes in this film, he doesn't want to do that anymore.
I'm fucking infamous. I'm one of the most notorious slashers in history, and I don't want to give that up. I am Chucky, the killer doll, and I dig it!
Because he enjoys being a doll. He enjoys being a slasher because it's easier. He doesn't get sick. He doesn't get old. He doesn't have to deal with all the problems of being a human. So he just completely embraces being a killer doll, and I think that's such a cool thing for the character and really solidified him as a great horror icon. So this film does that, and I really love that. Obviously, we still have Tiffany back. She's pretty cool. I didn't like the whole thing with Jennifer Tilly. They should have just left that whole thing out of the film. I don't know why they had to bring in the real, actress Jennifer Tilly and try to make it, oh, she's gonna go in the body of her. It's too much. It was too much for me. The Glenn and Glenda thing, I enjoyed them a lot more in season 2, honestly, so I will say that's definitely a leg up that season 2 has over Seed of Chucky. But still, having that whole thing in this film, it was interesting. It was a new thing, right? We had the baby happening at the very end of Bride of Chucky, so we were obviously expecting it in this movie, and that was one of the main focuses of whether or not they're going to be a killer or not. And it turns out that one side of them was a killer, one side of them wasn't, with the whole, Glenn being the one who's not wanting to kill, and then Glenda being the one who does want to kill, and they show that in season 2 a little bit, so I like how they kept consistent with that. It was cool. I was okay with it. I wasn't against it. I wasn't like, this is the most awful thing ever, like I feel like a lot of people were, but I just think the goofiness just went a little bit too far. The comedy went a little bit too far. Again, it should have stayed more grounded like Bride of Chucky did, and I think I would have enjoyed it way, way more. But I don't hate this movie. I don't hate it like a lot of people do. I could still find some level of enjoyment out of it. And the soundtrack is amazing. This is one of the best Chucky themes of all time. In number 8 spots, one of the most disappointing Chucky films, I would say the most disappointed I've ever been for a Chucky film, Cult of Chucky. I was so excited for this movie. I remember when it came out, I think it released on Netflix, I think, and I was just so excited, man. I was like, I can't wait, and I watched it, and I was like, yeah, it's okay, I guess. Like, there are some cool things about this. Obviously, they bring back the character of Nika, who I really enjoy her as a character, and they do some cool stuff with her in this movie. I just didn't like the idea of the whole Cult of Chucky concept. I just didn't like it, and obviously they do way more of that in season 1 and season 2 of the show. I didn't want that. I like having one version of Chucky, and him being the one who's killing people. It's a lot more simple. I do like the idea of him transferring to other dolls and such, but just having a bunch of him at once just to me got a little bit overwhelming, and I don't think it was kind of a lazy way of making him a more threatening character, because they felt like he probably wasn't threatening enough just as one doll. So they're like, okay, let's just put him in $1 million. And I understand their idea there, but I just wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't crazy. I really wish they went with another choice for this film, but I still like a lot of this movie. I think the Psych Ward location is a really cool location for the movie. You know, you have a lot of characters there who obviously, you know, not right in the mind. And so when they have to deal with Chucky, they're kind of confused as to what's going on. Some of them kind of are like, you know, completely okay with Chucky being there. They're like, oh, it's just a talking doll, but they just think they're crazy. So they're like, whatever. It's like when he's having the one conversation with the girl who's a schizophrenic, she's just like, oh, I'm hearing things, so I know you're not real. Like stuff like that's kind of cool. I do like that. But like I said, the concept I don't like too much, and the kills in this movie I despised a lot of them. I mean, especially the one where that shard of glass chops off that lady's head. What the fuck was that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I need some layer of realism. I don't care how unrealistic the concept of Chucky is. That is not what I want from this franchise. What I want from it is to have those aspects of it to be unrealistic. The whole Chucky stuff, that's your supernatural stuff. But when it comes to just normal stuff like a character getting killed, I want it to still be grounded in some way. And if a shard of glass can chop off someone's head, I know it can kill her. That glass could easily stab into her throat and kill her. But chop off her head, like without even, like it's just falling from the ceiling, it's not even that far up? That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, that made no sense. A lot of the kills didn't. And it was cool to see Andy again, I will say, even though I wasn't crazy about his acting in this movie. I think he does a much better job in season 1 and 2 of Chucky, but something about his acting in this movie, I just don't think he was doing that great of a job. I don't think he's really I don't think Alex Vincent is like an actor who like consistently acts in films, so it's not like he's had, you know, life of training for it or something, but you can kind of tell because he's not doing his best in this movie, clearly. But he's not in that much of it, so it's kind of okay. And one of my biggest issues with the movie is how it doesn't feel completed. Like, it doesn't have a third act, pretty much. It has the first 2 acts, and then it just kind of ends. Like, where you're supposed to get, there should be like another 20 minutes of this movie. There really should, technically. Like, we should have some way to resolve it. But obviously they were trying to build up for the TV series, which we didn't get to like 4 years after this film anyways. And I like how season 1 followed this film, but I don't really like the film that much. It's okay, like I said, it's okay. In the number 7 spot, Chucky Season 1. So I definitely enjoy everything from here on out. I think it's at least good. I do think Chucky Season 1 was pretty good. There's a lot of things I didn't like about it though. So first of all, flashbacks. Wasn't a fan of the flashbacks. I don't really want a backstory from Chucky, if I'm gonna be completely honest. I never really like backstories for like horror icons. Like sometimes I do, but especially a character like Chucky, like he's just evil to me. He's not supposed to have this tragic backstory. He's just evil. Like that's how I enjoy this character, just him being this evil person who just likes killing and he gets fun enjoyment out of it. That's what I want Chucky to be. And when we start learning about his backstory, it just kind of takes away from it a little bit. And the flashbacks weren't really handled well either. You had like this dub over with the voice, because obviously they weren't using Brad Dourif as Chucky for those things. They were using his daughter to do that, and they did, like, the makeup looked great and all, but then the voiceover just sounded really bad, especially Tiffany's voiceover. Oh my god, that was awful. So I didn't like that at all, and so I wasn't a fan at all. And they focused a lot on those flashbacks too. They really did. The kids in this season, although I really like the characters, I don't think their acting was all that great here. Thankfully, they really did a much better job in season 2. I think all their acting was way better, but I really wasn't a fan of a lot of their performances in this season. I just don't think they were able to deliver the lines in the best way. But to add on top of that, I don't think the dialogue was that great either. So they weren't given the best dialogue to work with. So it might not even been their own fault. It might have just been the dialogue itself. But a lot of the scenes just felt inorganic. It didn't feel like I was watching actual people conversating with each other. It really just did feel like you were watching, you know, people acting, which is not what you want out of a TV show, obviously. And I do feel like the legacy characters with Andy and Kyle and even Nika, they were kind of underused here. I really wish they used them a bit more like they do in season 2, but here I just didn't really like how they used them. They were barely in it, and when they were in it, it wasn't like that exciting, when they were in it. So I do like a lot of other things about this season though. First of all, I don't like the Cult of Chucky idea, like I said, but I do like how they utilize it in this season. I think the whole idea of having multiple Chuckies works a lot better in a TV show format. And I do also like how season 1 didn't have multiple Chuckies for most of the season. Most of it was just that one Chucky in the beginning, and then eventually we get introduced to the army of Chucky, and there's a bunch of them. And it's kind of cool seeing a bunch of them at once at the end. Like I said, it works much better for a show, and I think the way they utilize it here is pretty awesome. I love the location. Obviously, they're filming, I don't know if they're filming in Hackensack, but they were obviously, you know, it was set in Hackensack, which is perfect because it's obviously where Charles Lee Ray was from, so it fits perfectly. And even though, like I said, I didn't like the acting from the kids, I do like the characters themselves. I think the idea of Chucky trying to turn one of them into a killer is a really cool concept, and it was cool how it was at first Jake, and then eventually it turned over to Junior because he wasn't able to get Jake to actually do it for him. And the whole character of Junior and how he ends up turning into a killer towards the end of the season, I really love how they handle that. And the kills in this season weren't too bad, actually. Like, for a TV show, they were actually pretty good. It has a lot of same issues I had with season 2, but like some of it feels choppy and such, but at the end of the day, it's definitely a lot better than season 2, at least in my opinion. And it's definitely a lot better than Cult of Chucky and Seed of Chucky. In number 6 spot, I have Child's Play 3. So we're getting into some of the older films now. This one, I think has a lot of promise to it. I just think the biggest issue is the first act kind of drags a bit, and the kills suck. Like, this has got some of the worst kills out of any Chucky project ever. Like, one of them is just a heart attack. Like, sure, it was a little funny, and Chucky has a funny line about that. He's like, are you kidding me? I didn't even do anything. So, it was a little funny, but it was just a weak kill. The strangulation one, again, he has a really cool line, but it's just a strangulation. It's not that interesting. And then there's like the grenade one, where he tosses a grenade and the guy jumps on it. It's just a little grenade. Like, a lot of the kills just weren't that interesting. They weren't that innovative. They weren't that different. So I was just kind of like, whatever. But I like a lot about the movie otherwise. I like the new kid Tyler in this one. He's pretty cool, and his kind of like brother type relationship with Andy in this one, who is now older as well. And I do think the new actor they got for Andy was pretty good. I do think he portrayed Andy pretty well. And once you get to the third act, that's where stuff gets really good. I love the carnival location. The whole final like 20 minutes of this movie is just so great. It definitely, you know, makes up for the first bit of the film, which I wasn't always crazy about. And especially when you get the whole scene on like the roller coaster and Chucky gets his face slashed off, and then the whole fan thing and him kind of holding on, like one of the best endings to Chucky, and the way he gets just destroyed by that fan is just so cool. I really, really love the ending of this movie, and it holds it up quite a bit. But like I said, the first 2 acts I'm not crazy about, and the kills kind of drag a bit, but I enjoyed military base location, the military camp, whatever you want to call it. It's a pretty cool location. I enjoy this movie, but it doesn't really do much different than what Child's Play 2 did, which is probably the biggest issue I always had with it, is it didn't feel like it was doing anything different. It just kind of felt like another Chucky movie, but in a different location while Andy's older. You know what I mean? So it doesn't feel special in any way. In number 5 spots, this is definitely an unpopular opinion, but I actually have Child's Play the original from 1988. So I think the only reason this is lower is simply because there's less Chucky. And I know that's stupid, because part of that is also what makes the movie really good, is because he is scarier that way. Not showing as much of Chucky, not having him making funny one-liners, it makes him scarier. And he does have a couple funny moments in this movie, but most of it is kept serious for the first like act or 2. He is just kind of in the shadows, and I do think that works perfectly, and that is good for the film. But in another way, it is also like, I do prefer seeing more of Chucky, and obviously in the top 4, you do have a lot more of Chucky, so I do like that a lot more about those top movies. But this one definitely has the best horror elements of Chucky, so if you purely want a scary Chucky film, this one is the only one that can possibly maybe even creep you out a little bit. I don't think the other ones will. Maybe one of the other ones, but most of them won't. So this one's definitely best for that. I loved the reveal of Chucky when he first starts talking, when he's yelling at Karen. That's one of the best scenes in the Child's Play franchise for sure.
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
Karen as a character is really great as well as Detective Norris. Like, really just solid characters. Andy is just adorable in this movie. I think we can all agree. Like, it's just such an adorable kid. He's just so like innocent, and he's just kind of running around like, oh my god. I don't know. I really don't have anything against this movie. Like I said, it's just the fact that there's just less Chucky, and I just don't find that to be as enjoyable as the top 4, but it's a really damn good movie. Number 4 is gonna be the Child's Play remake. I know. Everyone gives me shit for this one. How could I possibly put the remake above the original? How could I possibly put the remake even this high at all? It is an abomination to the original Child's Play franchise. I call bullshit against all of that. I really don't like that concept that people have to just hate on remakes solely because it's a remake. I don't like that idea. Everyone gives remakes shit all the time. Sure, there's a lot of remakes out there that are pretty bad remakes. I will, agree with that. But this one, to me, is not a bad remake at all. Even though I believe Don Mancini wasn't very happy about this being made, and a lot of the cast of Chucky was not happy about this being made, who cares? It doesn't mean it can't be a good movie. Like, just because they don't like it doesn't mean I can't like it. It's not like they just took over Chucky and like you can't make Chucky films anymore with the original Chucky. You can still do that, and they are still doing that with the Chucky seasons. So there was no reason for this not to be made. Like, I don't feel like I never understood all the people who were like kind of championing like, not my Chucky. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not replacing the original. It's just a new thing on top of everything else. It's extra Chucky content. Why not? And I think why I like this movie so much, one of the main reasons, is it's very unique compared to the original. It does not try to be the original, which is what makes it such a great remake. The reason why a lot of remakes fail is because they try to recapture exactly what the original film did. There's a reason why the Psycho remake is not very good, because it literally does the exact same thing as the original. So like, what's the point of even having the film in the first place? Whereas this one is not the same as the original. The only similarity is the name Chucky, the title Child's Play, as well as having the character of Andy and Karen and Detective Norris. But all three of those characters are not even close to the same as the original characters. They're not even close to the same. And Chucky himself is not the same at all either. He's not a serial killer that has been, his soul has been put into a doll. It is not that. It is literally just a robot that the company has been just pushing out these like robotic like dolls, and one of them was malfunctioned because one of the workers like messed with the malware on it or whatever, and it just kind of made it so the doll would not have like the inhibitors in place that stop him from doing bad things. And I just like it a lot because you have this cool dynamic between Andy and Chucky in this movie. They do genuinely have a good relationship here, and a lot of it has to do with he just he's not really making friends that easily in this new town that he moved in, so he needs someone to talk to, and this doll is really advanced and it could talk to him. And I just really love how he starts like kind of protecting Andy as much as he can, and that'll cause him to do bad things like he hurts the cat. He actually ends up killing the cat at one point. And a lot of how that plays out, I think, is actually really interesting. And then it makes it more heartbreaking in the end when he has to defeat Chucky, because he actually had a friendship with him. And this is a time where I was okay with the idea of there being multiple Chuckies, because it makes more sense from a standpoint of it being AI rather than it being a soul going into other dolls. So when you had all these different, different Chuckies going on in that one scene, especially at the toy store when all the different devices by this company were going off and killing people, like that's such a crazy scene, and I just fucking love how it all plays out. Like, I don't have a lot about this movie I don't like. I don't love the idea of using a CGI Chucky though. A couple of the scenes they do use CGI for Chucky. I never really like that idea. I think you really need to utilize the practical effects as much as you can, and they do a lot in this movie, and it looks really great. The design, I know, looks a little funky, but it's not trying to copy the original design word for word, which is why it looks kind of funky. But I'm not against the design at all. I know it's trying to be different, so I'm fine with that. Great soundtrack by Ben McCreary as well. He really nails it with the soundtrack in this film. And Mark Hamill does a great job with the Chucky voice.
Good night, Andy.
It's like, obviously, you can't beat Brad Dourif's Chucky voice. You can't. But he's not trying to imitate his voice. He is doing his own voice, and it is damn good. So you gotta give it some credit there. And one other thing I don't love about this movie would probably be the other kid characters other than Andy. They're never really utilized in an interesting way. They just kind of feel like they're just there. I thought they were gonna do like an It or like Stranger Things like dynamic with the kids, but they actually never do, and they're just kind of there for like a couple minutes, and like I said, they don't do anything interesting. But I love Aubrey Plaza as Karen in this movie. She's actually really great, and the new Andy's pretty cool too. I like how he has a hard of hearing, and so it kind of comes into play with the story when Chucky starts messing with his what do you call those things? Fuck. Hearing aids? Why couldn't I think of the fucking word? And cracking into the top 3, I have Bride of Chucky. So this movie is so much fun. This is the perfect version of a comedic Chucky, because yes, this is not really a typical horror film. It's not, you know, about Chucky going and slashing people. It's just about an adventure with Chucky and his new bride, Tiffany. Fucking awesome stuff, man. The chemistry between Chucky and Tiffany is on point. This is some of the best voice work from Brad Dourif, and also Jennifer Tilly does a great job as Tiffany here.
What would Martha Stewart say?
Fuck Martha Stewart! Martha Stewart can kiss my shiny plastic butt!
I don't know what it is, but the voice is amazing from both of them. Like, I can listen to them, you know, argue with each other for hours. It's hilarious. The dialogue is hilarious as well. The situations they're put in are also hilarious. Like, there's a lot to this movie to really love, and even some of the kills are pretty good too, even though it's not really focused on that. It's more focused on the Bonnie and Clyde adventure that they have to try to get the Heart of Damballa thing from the graves in Hackensack. I think they go back to Hackensack for the graveyard. The character of Jesse and Jade, they're pretty good. The characters, I like how they're kind of forced into this situation from Chucky and Tiffany, and love how it all plays out, how they try to fight back in the RV scene. This movie is actually pretty quick, but it's short and sweet. Like, I really do have a great time watching this all the time. My favorite look of Chucky as well. I love the different scars he has on his face, and he just looks so awesome. Obviously, he carries this look over into Seed of Chucky, but this is when we first saw it, and it was just so great. Soundtrack is on fire too, especially when it comes to the licensed music in this movie. They have a lot of just great songs in it. There's no criticism I have for this movie. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror films, but it's not the best of the Chucky films. In number 2 spot is going to be Curse of Chucky. Such a surprise return for this franchise, because it was quite some time after Seed of Chucky that we haven't had a Chucky film. And I remember when they first announced this, because I actually personally started watching Chucky when I was like 6. I'm not even lying. I watched Child's Play 2 and a couple other Child Play films when I was like 6 years old, and Curse of Chucky came out when I was 13, and I was really looking forward to it because I wanted to see another Chucky film. And I remember going to the store with my parents, and they bought Curse of Chucky for me because it was a straight to DVD. It didn't go in theaters, which straight to DVD was something that I didn't really think twice about back in the day, but nowadays it would be kind of concerning to hear that something's going straight to DVD, because you're like, oh, did they not have enough budget to put it in theaters? Which was obviously the case. But watching this film, I fucking loved it, man. This was such a return to form for Chucky, because this, along with the original, is definitely the scariest of the Chucky films. This one definitely feels really scary. They return to the horror aspects of Chucky. Chucky does not have many like funny lines in this film. He's not trying to make funny quips all the time. Like, he is just being a complete like horror icon in this one through and through. He is scary. And I absolutely love how this movie kind of toys with you. And honestly, it did with me. I don't know if they were like public about whether or not this was a remake or if it was a continuation of the main story, but when I first watched it, I actually thought it was a remake. I thought it was a complete reboot of the franchise. But then we get the end scene when he gives that monologue to Nika about his past, and then you learn that no, this is in fact a continuation of the original 5 films, and I absolutely love that reveal. I don't know if it was supposed to be like a big reveal because I didn't know how the movie was presented to the public, but for me, because I was a 13-year-old and I didn't really follow public stuff, I was just like, whoa, this actually is part of those movies. I didn't even think it would be. And that was awesome. Nika, fantastic final girl. I would say she's one of my favorite final girls ever in horror, actually. I just love her being in a wheelchair, which really adds another dynamic to this film, because Chucky's way more threatening when you're trying to deal with him when your legs don't work. You know what I mean? Like, it makes it so much more frightening when they have that final battle with her versus Chucky at the end, because it's not like she can just easily run away. Like, no, she physically can't do that. So she has a way more difficult situation dealing with things. The house is really cool too. I love the location. It's a very creepy old house, and that makes for a lot of cool scenes. The kills are great as well. Like, a couple of the scenes are actually really well shot. Like the scene with when Chucky puts the rat poison in one of the person's food. The way they shoot that scene is just magnificent. Like, I don't know what it was, but their directing was on point in this movie. I don't know why it didn't carry over to Cult as well, but it was amazing in this movie. It was really, really good. New soundtrack too. They got a new theme for Chucky. It was fantastic. there's a lot to like about this movie. The characters are great too. Like, I love all these characters, not in terms of their personality. A lot of them are terrible people, but they're really fun to watch. And I love how it plays out, especially with the one guy, I forget his name, but the guy who does not believe Nika at all. He thinks Nika killed everyone, and then he eventually finds out, no, it was actually Chucky. And how all that plays out is so good. And then it ends with getting Andy returning, and then Andy puts his shotgun in Chucky and blasts his face off. It was so much of this movie is fantastic. Can't complain. The only thing I don't like, the only thing is CGI Chucky. This is one of the only Chucky movies other than the remake that used quite a bit of CGI. It was just because it was a little bit cheaper. It made some shots a bit easier. I get it, but it wasn't very good CGI, so don't do that again. And they didn't, thankfully. I don't think Colt used any CGI, if I can't recall, in terms of like Chucky. I'm talking about with Chucky. Obviously, they probably use CGI blood all the time, but in terms of Chucky himself, this one they used some CGI, and I just didn't like that. But there was just only a couple shots. It was maybe 30 seconds of the movie total, maybe even less. It's really not a big deal. And in the first place, it's going to be Child's Play 2. This is not only my favorite Chucky film, but it is one of my favorite horror films of all time. I would say my second favorite horror film of all time. This is the first horror film I think I ever watched, actually, because like I said, I was like 5 or 6 when I watched it, and I watched this one first, actually. And you could say nostalgia probably plays a role in my love for this film, but there's a lot more than that. The movie overall is just perfection. From start to finish, it is perfection. It is the perfect mix of the comedic and scary Chucky. Like, although Curse of Chucky and the original have a lot more of the scary Chucky and less of the comedic Chucky, and then obviously Bride of Chucky has way more of the comedic Chucky versus having the scary Chucky, whereas Child's Play 2 does a perfect mix of the both. He is funny in this movie. He makes a lot of good quips and one-liners, but he's also scary. Like, he still has a lot of moments where I am genuinely scared of him in this movie. Not really anymore, but I was way more when I was a kid, obviously. And they do it so damn well. Andy in this movie, I really love how the character of Andy kind of progresses in this movie, how he's now brought to a foster family and no one believes him. And it's really sad seeing it because, you know, obviously in the first one, at least he had Karen believing him at a certain point in the film. Whereas in this one, he has no one until Kyle, obviously. Kyle is a great character as well. I'm very glad they brought her into the TV series, but she is a great character, and his dynamic with Kyle is just fantastic. Some of the best characters in this whole franchise. I would say they're probably the best 2 characters overall. Maybe Nico would be in the top 3 as well, in terms of like not counting, you know, Chucky and such. I absolutely love their duo in this film and how they deal with the situation at hand. And obviously Kyle doesn't believe him at first and everything, and the foster parents and how they kind of treat Andy. It's very interesting to watch. It's very interesting to see them try to deal with Andy, who is someone that they think is a very troubled kid. They think he has done some bad things in the past, and he needs a lot of support and love in order for him to become a better person. But then they start to think he's just too far gone, especially after they think that he was capable of killing the dad, but obviously he didn't do that. And even with how the teacher treats him and such, and then eventually the teacher gets killed by the ruler, like, there's just a lot of aspects of Andy's character that you really just feel bad for him this whole film. You're just like, dude, this kid is going through so much. You just want him to get out of this situation. You just want him to kill Chucky for good. And so when you get that final act, that 20-minute long scene, you know, 10, 15, whatever, how long it is, in the factory, that is my favorite 10 or 15 minutes of Chucky ever. Like, that is the peak Chucky right there. That is the best scenes of the franchise. Chucky coming at them, attacking them in that factory. I absolutely adore all of that shit. Like, it is intense. Like, you wouldn't think a doll would be that intense, but no, the doll is very intense in these scenes. And especially the one kill where the guy gets the 2 eyes plopped into his eyes. Like, that's cool. And it's just such a colorful movie too. There's a lot of great colors to it. Obviously the school is very colorful, the scenes in the school, and then when you go to the factory towards the end, again, very colorful. The soundtrack is also incredible here. I really love a lot of the movies. I really love a lot of the soundtracks in the Child's Play franchise, but this one especially as well. This is the one they actually used the theme again in the TV series. That's just how damn good it is. So yeah, I don't dislike a single thing about this movie. I think it is a perfect Child's Play film from its start to finish. Chucky's awesome, and he looks really cool in this. It's not my favorite version of him, obviously. Like I said, Bride of Chucky's look was my favorite, but this is probably my second favorite look. His eyes are like blue as hell in this one. It's really cool looking. And I love how they had other Chucky dolls to use with the Tommy doll as well, and how Chucky talks to that Tommy doll is hilarious. It's a funny movie, but it still is very horrific otherwise. So it's the perfect mix, in my opinion, the perfect mix. So that's going to do it for my Chucky ranking. Let me know your guys' lists in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video for more videos. I might be doing a slasher icon ranking in the future, so if you would like to see me do that, definitely, again, subscribe to see that. Turn on the notification bells as well, so you'll know exactly when I upload these videos. Peace out, everyone.